Welcome back, everyone. We're Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news, the daily fail, meme review, software releases, hardware releases, and the pleb sites. Joining us today, Bitcoin legend. That's right. To me, he's a legend. I'm talking about Francis Pouliot. He's fellow Bitcoiner, pleb, and CEO of Bull Bitcoin. Francis, thank you so much for joining us, man.
I'm so fucking stoked to be on this show, guys. I haven't been on a podcast during this whole year, so I've been saving up for you guys.
Dude, we appreciate it. Yeah, man. And we are diving into the numbers. Get ready, my dude. Let's do it.
Mama time! Brought to you by Nodl. They make some of the best Bitcoin nodes, like the Nodl Dojo. It's in red. That means it's faster. Run your own version of Bitcoin Core and the Lightning Network, all in the comfort of your own home. Remember, guys, if you don't run your own Bitcoin node, you're using someone else's. That's a big no-no for privacy. So get yourself a Nodl Bitcoin node today.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 738,032. The Bitcoin price 29,295. Chain rewrite day 761. Total public Lightning capacity 3,909.22. Moscow time 3414. Blocks to the halvening 101,968. And the Samurai Whirlpool unspent capacity. Samurai Whirlpool is a CoinJoin or collaborative spend. It is not a mixing service. And the unspent capacity for that pool is 4,786.10 BTC. Nico, the numbers that look exactly like they did yesterday. I actually hit refresh before we started because I could have swore that they were the exact same.
No, man, the Bitcoin price is boring AF. This is true, but hey, look, if you do what we advocate on the show, DCA, stay humble, stack sats. Anyways, Phil, we got some very spicy comments, and I saved them for when Francis came on the show, because he was on the crazy panel at the Bitcoin conference with Svetsky. I would say the most toxic and the crazy Italian Bitcoiner that I fucking love. Giacomo. There we go. And they had the best panel. It was all true. It was pure signal, and I have a feeling that's why they put you on that stage far, far away. But anyways, so this is the first comment by Brad Keck. Sorry, Nico can't read. You guys know the drill. He says, all the inflation is attributed to companies making record profits every month. This only helps the top tier employees become more wealthy. So two components to that. You could tell that propaganda that Joe Biden is releasing and tweeting about how you have to top the wealthy people in order to bring down inflation. Francis, how do you feel about that?
I don't even know how to break down how fucking stupid that is. So inflation being caused by people making record profits. There exists a thing called competition. So, I mean, if someone raises his prices, then people will go to their competitor's price. I don't know how that's... You asked me to explain something that is an illogical construct. I cannot operate within an illogical construct. That being rewarding the companies... I mean, that's just bullshit Marxist talk. I don't know. How do we even address that? I would say, fuck you and you do you. Who cares? Like, I don't care about that argument. Like, is that, what's the reason why that argument is made? The argument is made specifically because it leads to the policy of taxing people more. So if you're framing the problem of inflation as people are making too many profits, that has the problem, the way you're framing the problem has a solution implied, which is we should take those fucking profits and give them back to us because we're paying for more shit, right? So it's just basically some kind of ad hoc rationalization in order to take other people's shit. And, the reason why they mentioned, well, it's the top employees that are making all the money, it's because they're already preparing for the counter argument, which is, well, if we start fucking taxing all those companies, then they're going to go out of business and everybody's going to lose their jobs. And their argument is probably, no, only the top useless executives that don't actually put in any of the labor are going to lose their jobs. And these are parasites. Anyway, it's just total Marxist rhetoric. So, but just generally, this comment actually reminds me of my master's thesis, my master's degree, was about problem framing and narrative framing. So whenever you see somebody try to frame a certain problem in a way, it's because there is an implied solution. There is some kind of somebody at fault, and there's a causality link. And all of this framing is obviously created to set up for the solution. And as we all know, the reason why inflation happens is because people print fucking money. I mean, I like to tell people, let's say that you're in a economics 101 class, and you have a 13-year-old student, or I don't know, 14-year-old student that raises his hand in class and says, Mr. Professor, why don't we just print more money and solve all these problems? And the obvious answer that any economics professor would tell you is because if we do that, everything's going to become more expensive. You can't create wealth out of thin air, So that is the reason, obviously, why inflation exists.
So does it surprise you, though? Another troubling aspect, and I'll pass this on to Phil, and then you could add on top of it, Francis. Does it surprise you that the president of the United States is trying to, because clearly the government is responsible for inflation because they clearly printed too much money, basic supply and demand, right? Does it surprise you that we're at this stage, at the fiat end stage, that this is where things are going?
I mean, it's not surprising where things are going. What's surprising is that, I don't know if it's surprising, probably more disappointing, is that people are still falling for these stupid narratives, right? At this stage, I mean, we've had 30 years of progressive narrative, tax the rich, redistribute the wealth. These policies clearly have not worked, and then you're looking at the money printing numbers are not, and this isn't something secret, right? So central banking and monetary policy used to be quite obscure. But when the U.S. government is printing trillions of money, that's in the news. Everybody sees that the government is printed trillions of dollars last year, and it's very. I would imagine it's very, very basic common sense. It's just goes to show to the level, the depth of the level of depth at which people have been fully brainwashed. I used to joke that it takes decades of Marxist brainwashing for someone to see something so simple as you print more money, the price of everything goes up because more money is chasing fewer goods. It takes a lot for people to program themselves into believing something very complicated. So that's not exactly shocking. It's a little disappointing. I mean, and I've had the same reflection for stuff like COVID and stuff like civil rights and where I believe that the power of the internet, the access to information, would wake the normies up. I was like, great, the internet is going to be that red pill. And then the problem was the lack of information. The problem was the quality of information that wasn't being delivered. Now that we have a platform, and now that these things are pretty obvious, like the WEF stuff, for example, is not even. It's recorded. It's transparent. It's not hidden. It's not behind closed doors. They're fucking filming themselves saying, we will put the fucking microchip in the pill and you will fucking eat it.
It is basically biological chip that it is in the tablet. And once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet. So imagine the applications of that, compliance. The insurance companies to know that the medicines that patients should take, they do take them. It is fascinating what happens in this field.
They say that publicly. So how are we supposed to fucking interpret this, right? So the information is out there. People are either shut out, embracing their slave nature, happily, merrily, or they're just cognitively incapable of grasping these ideas, perhaps because I underestimated how, dumb people are, maybe. I don't know, than the masses are. I don't think so, but I mean, maybe. Or there's some psychology at play where it's the thing with money printing also, it's what is the average person supposed to do about this problem? It's everybody knows that you can't control money printing. It's a bunch of bankers that are doing that. That's like in the normie narrative. Like, it's a bunch of central bankers that are dictating this thing. I don't have any power over this, and they're right. Whereas, like taxes and stuff like that, you can lobby your congressman and like raise taxes, and you can get your own group to get some kind of special advantage. So I guess people feel like detached from monetary policy. So because they can't do anything about monetary policy, they're going to think, well, maybe I'll just advocate to tax the rich because that's something that we know we can do. That is a successful policy that has worked in the US. Like, if you complain long enough about rich people, the government will take their money and give it to you. But if you complain that the government is printing too much money, well, and all of these Marxist people, they're allies of the government. They're not going to criticize the government. Like, they need and want the government to print the money. They don't care about inflation. They only care about who gets the money first, and it's like, well, inflation is not that bad, they might think, because the government will print the money and will give it back to us. So it will compensate us for the inflation more than perhaps the rich. So yeah, fucking Marxist mumbo jumbo. That's what I think.
All right, so next comment, Phil, and then I'll pass it on to you and then to Francis because we're short on time. So next comment is by Duncan, and he says, and this was referencing, we put up a short on YouTube, right? And we said, listen, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a good thing because fiat currencies, inflation, it's gonna suck. And this was his response. He says, because crypto, first of all, we're a Bitcoin channel, not a crypto channel, but whatever. Because crypto is way more stable than actual money. Oh, wait, it's not. Then why the heck are we talking about it? People complain about 5% inflation rates, but crypto value can flux almost entirely due to demand. Government money isn't perfect, but it's better than the alternative. Heck, society needs taxes to function. How the heck do you think government is going to tax crypto? Before you guys say anything, it's not. Okay, anyways. Francis, Phil?
I'll go first because I'm sure that my answer is going to be a lot shorter and like definitely not as like in depth as Francis's. Okay, so look, there's just a lot of things wrong with that statement. But the implication that if we live on a Bitcoin standard, that governments can't still exist and provide value to a system, that's a false notion. Because if there's an incentive for a group of people to come together and create a viable service that not only provides that value to the users of it, but to the people who enforce it, and everybody agrees on it, that's commerce. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. This idea that if the Bitcoin world comes into play, I'm sorry, I'm not mentioning crypto, okay? But this idea that if the Bitcoin world comes into play, all of the gears of society stop working, this is completely insane, okay? The other little piece that I want to make is that Bitcoin is an emerging technology. It's 13 years old. As of right now, if we're looking at the numbers, if we have to drag numbers into this, Bitcoin is averaging 200%, I guess you'd say, growth annually. Okay, over its lifespan. So what's happening is the story of adoption. We are seeing Bitcoin swallow the world's value slowly but surely at this point, but soon it's going to be very quick. So don't get me wrong. I understand that we are still living in a fiat world, so to speak, because the majority of people are not awake to the fact that the value isn't being stored in our money. That's the other piece that he's missing. He seems to think that quote unquote, Bitcoin is unstable. He's not paying attention to the fact that he's lost over 99% of his purchasing power. He's not paying attention to the fact that while I'm talking, all of our fiat money is losing value. And the other piece that I wanted to make is that it's not, the money printing is a huge aspect, but also, unfortunately, there's human beings involved and human beings need to have faith. And the money printing and the faith, I think, do go hand in hand. So I think that both of these are essentially equaling what is the downfall. But to my point, again, Bitcoin is not as bad as the controlled centralized fiat system, and you need to do more research, bud.
I agree, and this is why we cover these. So Francis, back to you, but I'm going to read the last part of the comment, just to make it more spicy. He says, society needs taxes to function. How the heck do you think government is going to tax crypto?
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point, isn't it? But so the government can definitely tax Bitcoin currently. And they do so by asking people to hand over their fucking bank statements and their exchange balances and so on and so forth. It does make it significantly harder. So as a Bitcoiner, you can think of yourself as not being the low-hanging fruits for the taxman. You're a higher-hanging fruit. It's not impossible to tax a Bitcoiner. It just makes it more difficult. You cannot seize Bitcoin if you refuse. Right? That's a huge component. In contrary to government money, if you don't pay your taxes and you have a bank account in the country where you're supposed to pay taxes, they'll eventually just seize it. Whereas if you have Bitcoin, they might put you under arrest and ask you, where's the money? Where's the Bitcoins? And then there's all sorts of options that you have. If you want to contest your tax burden, for example, you say, well, at least you can remain in control of your funds if you're a Bitcoin holder. But I believe in what Phil said, that there will always be some kind of government. We just have to rethink what we have in mind when we think about government. I will be a government for fucking sure. When I have my compound, my condo association, essentially, my citadel, we will have some rules, right? There will be some rules for you to join. There will be a constitution that you will have to sign that will limit some of your behaviors. And there will be a tax imposed. You can call it a condo fee. You can call it a membership fee. It's still some kind of tax. And that will go towards paying for the bunker, for the common bunker. That will go towards the armed guards. It will go towards the roads and the infrastructure and the electricity, the internet, maybe the emergency evac service that we share, maybe some common insurance. We're just going to have decentralized competitive governments. And if my citadel group is and I'm going to be working fucking hard for your money. I mean, because I know that I can't do shit if you don't pay me. I mean, yeah, I can, be like, I can force you to leave, which governments don't do. Normal governments, they don't force you to leave when you pay your taxes. They force you to stay. It's a huge difference. If you don't pay your taxes on my property, maybe there's gonna be some rule. There's gonna be some arrangement. I don't know. We're gonna come together in some way. Some people will decide to live off the grid, but there's just a simple fact that we need to have cooperatives, whether they're, and I think we can call them businesses as well. I mean, governing businesses or resource management businesses for a bunch of people on a geographical location. So I think that that's definitely the way. And I think a resource for people to read on this is the book, The Sovereign Individual. It talks a lot about this concept of not only the sound censorship resistant money, but the private communications and 3D printed, 3D manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. It's going to make it a lot. It's going to increase the cost of violence on individuals, and taxation is violence. So it's going to make it a very competitive business, and then you're going to have jurisdictions or little splinter groups like my Citadel that are doing arbitrage with each other. If we see that someone else's Citadel is taxing people and offering a shit deal, well, from our point of view, these are clients waiting to be picked up, and we're going to, reduce our rates and increase our services. And regarding the volatility, I mean, the guy is not exactly wrong, about the price volatility. When Bitcoin goes from like 60K to 30K, it's like, oh, store of value, big deal, 50%. Obviously, if you look at the chart not everybody got in early. So some people are currently suffering, and in their current frame of mind, I totally get it. When I got into Bitcoin, it was like halfway through 2013, something like that. And then I kind of like rode that first wave up really quickly. I get into Bitcoin, and then it fucking goes up from 100 to 1,000. I think I'm a fucking genius. And then I have a year and a half of Bitcoin slowly going from 1,000, 100 down to like $200. So it dropped like 85% over 2 years. So it doesn't seem like a really good store of value. But if I look back on that period of my life now, so not to be too cliche, but just lower your time preference. That's it. We don't. There's a lot of things that we don't see. Inflation being like 15, 20%. Inflation is starting to get in the same levels as Bitcoin crashes. So that's interesting, right? So back in the day, inflation is like 2-3%, and Bitcoin crashes like 35, 40%. Now inflation is like 15, 20%. Bitcoin crashes 30%. We're getting into similar levels here, but the thing is, inflation only goes one way, right? Whereas Bitcoin goes down, it goes back up, it goes down, it goes. inflation just goes up. When's the last time you saw inflation go down? I mean, maybe historically a little bit, but, not significantly. I mean, the rate of inflation has decreased, but, everything is fucking more expensive generally.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. Could not have said it better myself. Bitcoin gives you the power to not only vote with your wallet, but also your free, and that is going to change the relationships between governments and its citizens. But anyways, Phil, it's time for
The Daily Fail. Brought to you by Swan. Check them out, swanbitcoin.com. That's right, we got this cool Swan logo thing that I'm doing for it. It is a Bitcoin stacking platform by fellow plebs. Automated Bitcoin savings plans, instant purchases. They're serving clients of any size. That's right. And they're coming out with an app. The link is down below. All right. So this fail is going to be a little unconventional. I believe that I covered this maybe over a year ago, but not so extensively. Now, what I'm referring to is sometimes we get people popping into the chat that mention this ISO 222 standard. Okay, so every once in a while we'll see, like in the YouTube videos, somebody will pop in and go, do you guys know about ISO 20022? And do you know that it makes Bitcoin obsolete? And oftentimes I have no idea what they're talking about, and usually they're just trolling with it, and they'll pop in a couple of comments and then they'll leave about that. Now, I don't know how many people have actually heard about this, but I did some digging into this, and there's obviously there's a few shitcoins that have adopted this standard. So of course, they won't be obsolete, but everything else will be obsolete except for these very special shitcoins. Anyways, let's dive into what ISO 20022 is. Now, it's really great that we have Francis here because Francis is the founder of Bull Bitcoin and understands a lot more about finances and economics than Nico or I do. So it's going to be very interesting to get his take on, because I could be wrong, right? Maybe this makes everything obsolete and I'm totally full of shit, and Francis can, at least I can get an objective third party that's going to invalidate me. So here we go, okay? Let's do this. Let's dive into it. So, ISO standards. The ISO standards are internationally agreed by experts. First, I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of an explanation of the ISO standards before we take a look at this very specific ISO standard. Think of them as a formula that describes the best way of doing something. It could be about making a product, managing a process, delivering a service, or supplying materials. Standards cover a huge range of activities. Absolutely. Standards are the distilled wisdom of people with expertise in their subject matter and who know the needs of the organizations they represent. People such as manufacturers, sellers, buyers, customers, trade associations, users, or regulators. Okay, there we go, regulators. Got that word in there. Okay, so let's go take a look at ISO 20022. A single standardization approach, methodology, process, repository to be used by all financial standards initiatives. Interesting. So ISO 20022 is a multi-part international standard prepared by ISO Technical Committee TC68 Financial Services. It describes a common platform. Hold on, let me just make this a little bigger. It describes a common platform for the development of messages using a modeling methodology to capture in syntax independent way financial business areas, business transactions, and associated message flows. A central dictionary of business items used in financial communications. A set of XML and AS1 design rules to convert the message models into XML. Now, for the people who have never dealt with this is just it's a programming language. It's a high-level programming language. That's all it is. It gets used a lot on the internet. It also gets used a lot in databases. Okay, but we're not really going to get into the thick of that. But what we are going to do is we're going to take a look at a video that explains this in easier terms, okay, so that everyone can have an idea what this means.
When people communicate, they often get confused and end up misunderstanding each other. Take the word football, for instance. It might mean one thing to an American and something entirely different to a Brit. Well, it's no different in the business world, where the stakes are way higher. Here, a simple misunderstanding can lead to disastrous consequences. So how do you improve communication, make sense of different meanings, standards, and formats, and get everyone in the financial sector on the same page? Easy. By using ISO 20022, the international standard that's designed to simplify global business communication. You see, ISO 20022 solves communication confusion. How? Well, it offers a global dictionary of common language that everyone can understand, so information can be processed and exchanged worldwide, clearly and consistently, making it easier than ever to communicate financial information between people and systems. What's more, ISO 20022 is a free and open standard, which means that anyone, anywhere can add their 2 cents to the dictionary to help write and build solid business standards right across the globe. Not only does ISO 20022 streamline communication for payments, securities, funds, foreign exchange trading, and credit card sectors, it also reduces risk, big time. ISO 20022, because common understanding leads to effective communication and makes doing business a whole lot easier. To learn more about ISO 20022...
Okay. There was our little video. Helps everybody understand now what we're talking about here, right? This is good stuff. So remember what they were talking about, free and open, right? Free and open solutions for everyone. All right, so I went in, got their PowerPoint presentation, okay, about how this works. So in ISO 20022, there's actors. Some of these actors are groups called the Registration Management Group, and they approve business justifications for new message standards, and they approve new member entities. They create standard evaluation groups, and then that's a whole other entity, standard evaluation groups. They represent the users in specific financial areas, and they validate new candidate messages, change requests. That doesn't really sound necessarily free and open. It sounds like a central entity. Anyways, moving on. So here we go. This is where the shitcoiners, they like XRP, start to think that they're going to start to get a foothold on the world, right? Because they always talk about how Swift is going to use our technology. We're 200022, we're 200022 qualified. So here we go. Let's dive into it. Over the next few years, the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Clearinghouse, the Euro System, and EBA Clearing, and the Bank of England's Real-Time Gross Settlement Service will all modernize their high-value payment systems with ISO migration, bringing new data components and the possibility to transfer far richer information in the payment chain. This not only promises greater interoperability between various settlement networks, but should mean simplified global business communications, higher levels of straight-through processing, more efficient compliance processes. For some market participants, this could be used as an opportunity to reassess existing business models. Now, the whole time you're wondering, you're like, Phil, what does this have to fucking do with Bitcoin? What does this have to do with what we're talking about? This has nothing to do with it. But shitcoiners are using this as an angle to try to get you to buy their bags. Now, let's go take a look at some certified, right? Here we go. This is the crypto list of the ones that are in compliance with 20022. We've got Ripple, Stellar Lumens, which is essentially the same company. And take a look at this. They're a member of the ISO 20022 standards body. Both of them are. And yet, that's where all the shills come from the XRP land. But you also have IOTA, right? The Tangle, where you have a whole bunch of nothing that transactions could be there, they could not be there, who knows? And then we've got Algorand, and of course, our favorite, Cardano, right? To quote Yellow. So look, guys, this ISO standard in no way, shape, or form means that your shitcoin is going to become anything else than what it is. The coin itself does not provide the functionality that they are proposing, okay? This is a standards for language. This is a standard for money changers that they're going to use to communicate. Why would this make your shitcoin valuable? Why would this be money? Why would your shitcoin that isn't used in any way to facilitate this technology become widely accepted because they embraced a set of rules? If the banks were to use your shitcoin technology, that wouldn't make your token any more valuable because the token itself is not used to provide the service or function. Okay? They're using the rails. That's all it is. It's a technology. Okay, they're not using the tokens. The problem also, the other reason that I have to debunk this is that this global standard in no way, shape, or form solves the problem of censorship or system exclusion or the central point of failure. So this is pure FUD from shitcoiners who need you to buy into the idea that their shitcoin has a use case. It's the partnership parade. Look, I'm important. These are my friends. This is all hocus pocus. Anyways, Francis, your thoughts on this?
So my first thought on this was one of my first jobs. I worked for a telemarketing company that was kind of a scammy company. And when I joined, they had like ISO certified everywhere. And then the first thing that they made us go through was the ISO certification training. And just to make sure that we are very legit. I mean, I know that everything that we do looks fucking sketchy, but we managed to get this certification. So if people are saying like, hey, I'm certified by some group of experts, you know, I'm immediately thinking like, why do they feel or crave the need to have some kind of certification? It's because they have a fucking image problem and they have a brand and reputation problem, that's for sure. So what they essentially did is, imagine like the postal service, they came up with like a template for stamps and addresses. And they're like, well, in some countries there's like apartment on the second line, and apartment doesn't mean the same in the UK. It's a flat in the UK. So you get confused. So let's come up with this fucking, so all our mail can have like a standardized, you know, little, you know, address or stamp or whatever. It's like, ooh, big fucking deal. You know, that is the lamest, stupidest innovation. And you know, when they show the video, they're like showing, oh, there's like all this messaging, communication, and business problems, and we're all on different standards. And it's like, first of all, do you not realize also that in that video, they're making the case against altcoins? They're like, imagine, you know, like we should have like one protocol for all values so that we don't have to switch back and forth in between all these different incompatible protocols. We should just adopt the superior one. But the thing is, they're like, we have decided ours is the superior one. And they're like, no, you can't go with the organic, with the grassroots standard that has been adopted by 50 million people in the world successfully for 12 years without a single payment failure. You can't do that because we have our group of experts. Where's your group of experts, you know? So they're making the case against altcoins in that video. They're making the case for Bitcoin in that video. They're effectively making the case against themselves, against traditional fiat payments in that video. And if you look at just like who is, and you can see who wants to be certified. It's like those shitcoins. Like these are the worst shitcoins. Like some of the worst shitcoins. I don't think about shitcoins too much, but I know IOTA is a fucking shit one. I know Cardano's probably the worst. You know what? Is it a shitcoin or is it just a straight up criminal enterprise? I don't know. But
only Charles knows.
Yeah, and Ripple is the king of all shitcoins. I don't know if it's Ethereum or Litecoin or Monero or Ripple. Anyway, they're all over there, but Ripple is definitely one of the king of the shitcoins. So that is the most inconsequential, stupid argument. And the thing with shitcoiners is that reminds me also of BSV. It's like, did you know that Craig Wright has a patent here and there and there? And there's like, that's like a con man mentality. It's like, but wait, I have an ace up my sleeve and we will reveal it at the end of a trick. You know, it's like, well, if your standard ISO thing meant anything and would make Bitcoin obsolete, why is Bitcoin not obsolete now? You already have a bunch of shitcoins that are using your standard. Why aren't we obsolete yet? Makes no sense, obviously. But it just goes to show that they will use, and the thing is that it is also very complicated for the average person to wrap their heads around an international financial standard. It sounds like it's a fancy thing, right? So you're like ISO 20022, and then some normie is going to look at that and it's like, oh, that looks official. You know, and they're going to see that it's just nothing. It has no value. And ISO is a private enterprise that, you know, basically you pay to certify yourself. So it's a shilling machine, basically. It's like a ratings agency kind of, but it's like a ratings agency for like you being legit, but they legitimize obviously a list of scams. So that just disqualifies. You know what you just did? You actually disqualified ISO for everything in the world right now because they just delegitimize themselves. I didn't even know about this standard, but looking at the shitcoins on that list, if somehow they managed to certify those shitcoins, they just completely made themselves irrelevant and untrustable on anything. I wouldn't trust them for telecom. I wouldn't trust them for energy or anything else they're working on right now.
Exactly, man. It's
Destroyed.
it's like the Wall Street credit agencies where, you know, they rated Bear Stearns before the collapse, like super high rating. It's all bought and paid for. And just one last comment, like compliant. Something compliant. Like, you know, like that is the exact opposite of what Bitcoin represents, right? And the reason that they do that is because that's the only way these shitcoins survive. They have to get in bed with the state. They have to get in bed with the government and then use the power of government to try to, you know, snuff out their opposition through regulation, which is exactly what's already happening basically with the XRP guy paying $5 million to launch a social media attack against Bitcoin. He wants government to say Bitcoin is not environmentally friendly to do what? To pump his shitcoin, to pump XRP. So yeah, man, compliant. Haha. But anyways,
All
Phil,
the
it's
Bitcoin-
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Really quickly, all the shitcoins marketing is based on something's bad with Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. And there's a few lists of FUD that they have. You know, there's like 5 or 6 or 7. There's the environment. There's it's not regulated. And then each shitcoin is specializing in one of the arguments, targeting a specific segment. And this one is like the financial bureaucrat, normie people that are like, well, I don't want to get into it. Is it even regulated? Is it even legal? Is it even compliant? And they're like, actually, it's not. Bitcoin is not compliant, and I have a compliant shitcoin. They're like, oh, that's interesting, you know. So,
Exactly.
so that's what they do. They look at the different FUD attacks that people feeling towards Bitcoin, and they will target people, and they will actually design their shitcoins from the beginning based on something that they can FUD Bitcoin for and attract clients, you know, to dump their bags on.
Exactly. They'll use the peer-reviewed and the fact that Bitcoin is not peer-reviewed as, you know, as an attack vector. But Honey Badger doesn't care. Anyways, Phil, it's time for
The Daily Meme Review.
brought to you by Citadel 21. They make the best Bitcoin cultural zine. It's stories, articles, comics by actual Bitcoiners. Pure pleb signal here. Every volume has different artwork. Check these out. This is the artwork for volume 2. This is the artwork for volume 11. This is the latest one to drop. And they're scarce. There's only 1,000 copies made per volume. So get your physical prints of Citadel 21 today before they run out. All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Meme Review, the daily meme review, where we review Bitcoin memes. Memes play a central role in this narrative trench warfare that we're fighting every day in the battlegrounds of Twitter and the internet. Anyways, let's check out this first meme by Solomon Ultra. My hash is better than yours. What do you mean by hash? What I mean by hash. All right, very good, very good. Moving on, by the legendary RD_BTC, Christine Lagarde, waiting for inflation to come back. She is such a freaking liar. Okay, moving on, by Conspiracy Bot. Your money is fake, your food and water are being poisoned. All these wars are based on lies. Your country is run by a bunch of pedophiles, and you're too distracted by bullshit to do anything about it. This is a good one. Francis, what do you feel about this meme? This struck a chord.
I love this meme. I love this meme. This is kind of like what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. Normies, how to reconcile the idea of people literally having access to this information. The money is fake. That information is not only on the internet. People know by now because they can see that their money is losing value, and that they can see that when they go to the ATM, they can't withdraw as much as they want. Food and water are being poisoned. This is a bit harder. I think this is a little bit harder for normies to wrap their hands around. This is not as obvious as the money being fake, I believe, because the conditioning that we've had for the food is like something that we get when we're born, and we internalize it so much. It's kind of like part of our body, part of our habits. I mean, the money too, but I guess that the inflation relationship with money printing is probably more obvious and more direct and quick than nutrition and health. That takes like 20, 30, 40 years. Whereas we see like the government prints 5 trillion and then the year after, you know, everything costs 20% more.
Yep.
all these wars are based on. This is a great meme, and this is just Jerry here reminds me of just the perfect looking NPC. He owns nothing, and he's happy, and I'm not sure he's even distracted by bullshit. I think he's just happy not to have to have an existential crisis, because again, I'm sure Jerry can't do shit about changing his life, and it's also because doing something about all of these problems, right? Money's fake, food is fake, your country's taking your money and going to war. That's something that's really hard to tackle.
Did it just cut?
Yeah.
There we go.
A plantain. So this meme gets a plantain rating. This is
a plantain
right here.
A plantain.
Yeah. That's good. That's good because plantains are good. Plantains are a good source of carbs. Good nutrition.
Plantain. All right. That's a good score. All right. We're not even done with the meme review. We already got a plantain given. All right. Next one is by Satoshi Hodl. Blockchain, time chain, Leota chain. By the way, shout out to Ray. He passed away today. Well, he'll forever live on in the memes. Anyway, next one by RD. You can't just hodl through another bear market, Bitcoiners. Patience is necessary to reach one's goal. Absolutely true. This is what Francis was talking about earlier. The Fast and Furious Tokyo Grift.
I had to.
It's Wolf of Wall Streets. It's Paul. What's his name? Raoul Paul. And
Raoul.
then
Novogratz and
Novogratz.
Duquan.
And the last one's a piece of art. The world's not that bad. It's your government that sucks. Very powerful memes. Francis already gave it a plantain. That's already a real plantain. So that's already a good score. I'm gonna give it BTC pins already still in the package. A honey badger pin that you could wear. And this is what Slock was explaining to us. This is an ISPIS, meaning if you're in Bitcoin, you understand what this symbol means. But if you're not in Bitcoin, just looks like a honey badger. Anyways, Phil?
It's good that you reminded all of us about that, because I totally forgot that. I totally forgot that that's what it was called. Okay, anyways, I am giving it this amazing, really helpful Loom Cube. That's right, I need it for extra lighting sometimes.
Loom Cube.
Loom Cube.
Very, very, very good scores. Anyways, guys, we want to know if you agree with our scores. You disagree, let us know down in this comment section. Comment. Help us, because the mysterious YouTube algorithm, it likes the comments. And anyways, make sure to subscribe to us on on alternative video platforms, because we do talk shit about the World Economic Forum, like Rumble.com, and our personal favorite, BitcoinTV.com. They don't censor there because it's Bitcoin TV. And join our Telegram group. It's a party. Join it, and you can link us some awesome memes to review with other plebs. It's really cool. But anyways, Phil, it's time for
the Daily News.
Brought to you by CryptoCloaks.com. They make some of the best 3D printed Bitcoin merch, like the famous 3D printed Bitcoin grenade toy. Comes in any custom color your heart desires, like in blue, like in black. Any color you can think of, but this is my favorite because it's in gold, and that that pisses off Peter Schiff. And of course, the famous 3D printed Bitcoin Honey Badger. You can take advantage of the promo code down below to get 5% off anything off the Crypto Cloaks online store. All right, everybody. So, another country made Bitcoin legal tender. We're at 2. We have El Salvador. We have the Central African Republic, and we also have Panama, right? But it's not official legal tender. In my opinion, it's better that way because the Panamanian government doesn't force people to use Bitcoin. It's all voluntary, right? So we got 3 countries so far. And of course, for some reason, the IMF, this is Bloomberg, right? One of the most well-respected legacy, traditional finance outlets, right? And for some reason, every time a country makes Bitcoin legal tender, some reason the IMF's opinion really matters what a sovereign country is doing. Anyways, Bitcoin adoption by Central African Republic, a concern, IMF says. We reported this came out May 4th. The Central African Republic's adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender presents a series of challenges for the country and the region, the International Monetary Fund said. The adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender in the Central African Republic raises more legal transparency and economic policy challenges. They always say those really big words, but they never explain it. IMF staff are assisting the regional and Central African Republic authorities in addressing the concerns posed by the new law. So check this out. Okay? because this is a lot more ridiculous than you think. A sovereign country passes a law and Bitcoin becomes legal tender in that country, and the IMF is saying that it's working with authorities to do what exactly? Anyways, it's not only the IMF, the World Bank has a problem with the Central African Republic's decision. This came out recently, May 25th. The World Bank is also concerned about a plan by the Central African Republic to set up a crypto hub after it became the world's second country to adopt Bitcoin, citing lack of transparency and the effect the move may have on financial inclusion. Remember what we were talking about Biden and him gaslighting you? This is the fucking definition of gaslighting. Bitcoin, the problem with Bitcoin is lack of transparency and lack of financial inclusion. They're shitcoin. So they're saying fiat is more inclusive and fiat is more transparent? Anyways, the Bank of Central African States, which sets monetary policy for 6 countries in the region, said it wasn't aware and pushed back against the plan. Again, apparently the central bank should have a say on what a country's laws should be and should not be. The last part before I get your guys' thoughts, to quote the World Bank, it is important that the relevant regional institutions such as the central bank and the banking authorities are fully consulted and remain in the driver's seat. You know, there's something that we always talk about on this show about how Bitcoin shines the light of truth on everything. And here it is, one of Bitcoin's least known unintended features, or maybe it was intended, doing its thing, revealing the scheme. Maybe it's not really these countries calling their own shots, because it looks like to me, based on their wording on those very legitimate publications, also known as Bloomberg, they apparently have a very big problem about what the Central African Republic is doing with their currency. And with the World Bank, exactly, to quote the article, they want to be consulted every time the Central African Republic wants to pass a law. Holy shit, are these people fucking crazy? Those are my thoughts. Francis, is your blood boiling as much as mine?
So the IMF has its own shitcoin. I don't know if you guys knew that. If I was to say what is the biggest competitor or the biggest market that Bitcoin has to gain, it is international settlement, right? Large international transfers between petroleum companies, governments, and all of that international reserve asset. And the IMF has a shitcoin that does just this, called the SDR, the special drawing rights. So when a country wants money from the IMF, which will loan it to them, and the special drawing rights, just so people are aware, it's kind of like a stable coin, an algorithmic stable coin that's composed of fiat currency. So it's like the worst of fiat. Basically, it's like, think of all the worst things about fiat. It's like, well, just take a bunch of fiats, stick them in another fiat, and then that fiat is controlled by an international government, and that we will loan you our shitcoin fiat that competes with, our member states as currencies and with Bitcoin. And in exchange, you have to basically do whatever the fuck we say. That is exactly what the SDR is. So the IMF is just protecting its market, right? Because it preys on vulnerable countries, like shitcoiners prey on vulnerable, desperate people that need the money. You can make 10x. You can get this free SDR money, which you will be able to spend at a central bank near you. So they're just a salesman, selling their own alternative to that. I think there's 3 things that governments can do, like 3 good policies. It's just in general, just only 3. There's one of them is Bitcoin legal tender. The other one is remove all KYC AML and disband all KYC AML enforcing agencies. Without this, the legal tender thing is it's lacking a little punch. And I can't remember. Oh yeah, and then prevent banks from shutting down the accounts of Bitcoin companies, because that is the biggest hurdle to becoming a successful Bitcoin entrepreneur. And most of the Bitcoin entrepreneurs, and that is why the thing with this, and I do like what the president did, which is not as the permission of the central bank, because he understands that the central bank of his own country is his enemy. And why would you tell your plan to the enemy in advance? So I don't know who this guy is. I want to learn more about him. I didn't know that he didn't tell the central bank. I think that's fucking badass. I think it's very smart.
So to be specific, it's because the Central African Republic, they don't have their own central bank. It's a central bank that controls 6 African nations, right? So it's even worse. It's even worse because they don't get to control their monetary policy. It belongs to someone else. So it's even more insane. And they still want to be asked fucking permission, bro. I'm turning red because of how crazy that sounds.
You nailed it with the gaslighting, right? So it's like, okay, so I didn't know that they were part of the African franc. So who the fuck knows how that currency is even managed? And I believe, after reading some of Alex Gladstein's stuff about this specific topic, which I didn't know much about, it's all managed in France anyway, probably by some French bureaucrats. So you're like you're like a Central African normie. What's easier to understand? Like the Bitcoin white paper and a bunch of articles that you're going to find online that are written by, I don't know, Gigi and all these kinds of guys, or like the workings of an international central banking system. Like obviously Bitcoin is much more transparent, and financial inclusion, because it's worked great in Africa so far. It's very inclusive, right? Okay, It's insulting, right? Like these people, like the hubris, and it's hard to tell if they believe they're bullshit because they're so isolated from the average person, or they're just nefarious. I think they actually starting to swallow their own shit at this point, because it's so obscene to say. I mean, I don't have enough empathy to imagine what it's like to say that kind of shit with a straight face, but I don't know.
Francis, honestly, we've been going back and forth on whether they're nefarious or whether they're just sniffing their own farts. We have absolutely no idea. Phil, before I get your thoughts, let me play this video. Speaking of hubris,
there is this graph about the balance sheet of the European Central Bank and the money that is on there now. And here it is. What I would like to show our viewers and ask the question about is, this is going over 8 trillion euros now. And isn't what you just told us about the cryptocurrencies, don't we see a gigantic bubble here on your balance sheet with the euro? And isn't this graph very nerve-wracking?
Well, I can tell you that there is 0 crypto assets in the balance sheet of the ECB.
That I know.
Point number 1. Well, I just don't want any ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
But you have to think in terms of counterfactual. If we had not decided on March 18th, when we put together the pandemic emergency program and then subsequently increased the volume of commitment that we made to the European Union economies, we would be in a devastated situation. So I don't regret any of that move that we took on that day, which was 4 months into my job, to significantly increase the size of the balance sheet, because that's all we had.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the economy would have collapsed, and it would have been even accelerated by a financial crisis.
You had to do it. It was the COVID crisis. You say that's what we needed to do. But how do you get it?
It will
back?
come. It will come. In due course.
How?
In due course, it will come.
Yeah? But do you sleep at night when you see this?
Of course I have to sleep at night. I have to worry.
Over here.
I was wondering, do you own any cryptos yourself?
No, I don't, because I want to practice what I preach.
And then
I know how it works, and I actually have a son who invested in cryptos, yes. So I follow very carefully.
And what have you taken away from that?
That I would not put my finger in there.
And he didn't listen to your advice.
As the convicted felon.
No.
No.
He's a free man.
He is, yeah. Did he lose a lot?
He wouldn't tell me.
oh God, that was a great video.
Wow.
The facial expressions, and shout out, by the way, shout out to the host. Shout out to who was asking questions. You're a brave man. You'll probably be dead in a couple weeks and, suicided yourself. But how are you going to bring it down? It's gonna go down. Francis, what are your thoughts on this? And then we'll pass it on to Phil. Phil, you wrap it up.
So body language, I mean, is very obvious when he asks, how is it going to go down? It is going to go down. They're going to fucking tank the economy. It's controlled demolition. They're waiting for the right moment to crash the bubble back and fuck everybody over. So that's why she has that facial expression. It's like, because she's in a corner. It's like, how do you make it go? How do you make the bubble go down? And the answer is, you don't. You pop it. But you pop it strategically when we're ready. For us, the building is crumbling, and they're just kind of like chopping at little bits so that when they blow it up, it falls in the right direction. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen. You can also notice in the beginning, she has a very subtle passing on the responsibility moment where she's like, 4 months into my job. There's also something where she starts by answering the question, which is the speech that they've prepared when the plebs are outside their castle with the pitchforks and the scaffolds, trying to hang them. Say, well, if we hadn't done that, you would have been in an even worse position. So we did it for your own good. That's the only defense that they have against the masses of people. That's exactly what they did as a narrative with the lockdown. You'll notice there's a lot of similarity between those two crowds as well in terms of narrative. Like, if we hadn't locked you down and forced you to take the fucking jab, then we would have 3 million more deaths, or all these bad things would have happened. So we did it for your own good, out of love. And the last bit at the end is so fucking cringe. Like, I wonder if it's the same kind of Schiff might be strategically hedging his bet with his son. And just like the fact that if your son is not listening to your advice, why should I? Don't you realize like how disconnected can like a mother leader be to say like, my children don't listen to me, but you should? It's like, no, like, you're not even my mom, man. I'm not, And the last thing at the end there that about her son, I can't remember. I noticed something. The video is amazing, by the way. Christine Lagarde is a horrible human being, and it's just so nice to see her squirm. But I can't remember. There's something at the end there that I noted.
Oh, where she says, "I want to practice what I preach," or how?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I thought that's a very interesting answer, because do you own any crypto? No. Why? Because I think it's a bad investment. I think it's going to go to zero. It's like, no, the reason that she says is, I don't own crypto because I'm publicly advocating against crypto, so it would be hypocritical. So that is the essence of her argument, not because of the reasons why you say crypto is bad. To be fair, props to her for if she is honest, which she's not, but if she were honest, and if she does decide to go down with the fiat ship and never ever get into Bitcoin and end on the streets begging for money for her, well, she won't, because her son has Bitcoin and presumably the son will take care of her. But if she didn't have a son that owned Bitcoin, I would expect those central bankers to follow the same route, which is to go down with the ship and drown. So props to them if they do, but we all know that that's not going to happen. They're going to be in Switzerland, living the life, spending off the hordes of normies for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm. That you got that exactly right. Anyways, Phil, closing thoughts, my friend.
Wow. You know what? I really did not get to dive into the second half of that video because I was so triggered.
I saved it because I knew Francis was coming.
I was so triggered by the first half. I never even saw that second half. Anyways,
it was so hard for me not to play the whole thing yesterday, but I knew Francis was coming. I was like, this is too good. This is too good.
I did the same thing. I didn't watch the end of the video on Twitter. I was cringing so hard that I closed it before the sun comments. I'm really happy I got to see her squirm a little because she's a horrible person.
I think we all did. I think we all started watching that. We're like, fuck this shit.
Dude, when she answered the thing about, like, do you sleep? I feel like there was like a little glimmer, like little thing in her eye, like, do they know I'm a vampire? Of course I sleep. What are you talking about? I don't drink children's blood.
For a second there, she had to figure out if she was a human or not. Like, are they asking me to play the role? But look, in terms of the points I wanted to make, look, just quite simply, that particular speech is very interesting when she makes the point about there's no crypto on the ECB balance sheet. And it's a very stern statement, and it's meant to convey. Oh, everybody's muted.
She wasn't asked that question.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't asked that question. But she made the statement that there is no, like, that was her. She was reacting to what she was thinking about it. So it was very important for her to make that statement and be very clear that she's looking out, right? They're looking out for your best interests. So a convicted felon that's in charge of, as Francis alluded to, magic money that is created out of thin air. We've done a whole thing about SDRs and how they're a whole other layer of fiat that is imploding. Okay, they've lent out more money than they ever have in history. Anyways, you know what? The IMF is shitting in their pants. Christine is shitting in her pants. These people have
totally shitting in their pants. Totally shitting. That's what I was gonna say. That's the vibe I get, is shitting in their pants energy. I got to see Janet Yellen do a speech against Bitcoin in person in Montreal. Complete coincidence. She just fucking trashed Bitcoin on stage. I recorded it and put it on YouTube. And Janet Yellen was spewing the worst and stupid FUD one after the other like a shitcoiner. And Lagarde does not really do that. She's almost capitulated in her mind. And I think because Janet Yellen was just reading off a prompt, and Lagarde is like thinking about the answers because she's actually considering this. So the ECB chief is considering the threat of Bitcoin very seriously. And when she says, like, we don't own any crypto at the ECB, just to be really clear, I want there to be no ambiguity. So there is a potential for ambiguity. Yeah. There is a potential for an entity like the ECB to have it. It's not so far out of the realm of possibilities that we don't even need to put a disclaimer on it, because you don't put disclaimers on every single thing that can't happen, right? So it's like, all right, so now possibility of a central bank owning Bitcoin is now potentially within the frame of possible things. So we need to address that. She hasn't realized yet that she's manifesting a lot of things in reality with her language, you know, and people are. And I'm like, I just go Christine, continue doing your thing, because people are watching this and they may not understand IMF and ISO and SDRs, but they can read a face, that's for sure. Like regular people can read a face. And when are we going to get the economy back to normal, where we stop printing money and buying our rich friends as stocks? It will happen. It will happen. The rapture is coming. I will not disclose how. It's like, whoa. You know, okay.
It is so freaking crazy. I can't believe. I mean, it was always going to end this way. But hey, you know what? The central banks definitely deserve it. Anyways, Phil, there was an open source software release today. Why do you tell everybody about it?
Software releases brought to you by CypherSafe. Check them out, cyphersafe.io. It's the best way to store your Bitcoin seed. You can't trust paper. Store your seed in the Cypher Wheel or the all-new Cypher Grid. They both come with a tamper-resistant wire, and the grid also comes with a punch tool. All right, we've got GaloyMoney version 0.1.146 just got released today. The link to that is down below in the show notes. Don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. You could stream us sats through Breeze.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, guys, before we go, I want to give a very special shout out to our clothing sponsor. Phil and I wear the hoodies every single day. Represent LTD. They're making Bitcoin merch, the owners of Bitcoin Pleb, and they're making Simply Bitcoin merch soon. You can take advantage of the promo code down below to get 10% off. I also want to give a very special shout out to our awesome guest who've been trying to get on the show for months. He finally came. We're super happy about it. His name is the legendary Francis Pouliot. He is the founder of Bull Bitcoin. It is the best Bitcoin exchange in Canada. Phil used it to get some money out of the crumbling socialist Canadian under Trudeau thing. So anyways, I want to give a very special shout out to, but by the way, Bitcoin has a good shot at fixing this, especially if you take a look at the politician that the Bitcoiners are supporting. Tahiti's, what's his name? His name was in French, Phil, so I can't pronounce it.
Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes, yes.
So I do have hope for China, but definitely not under a CBDC fiat future, only under a Bitcoin future, and it will happen. But anyways, guys, that was our show. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Of course, if you want to continue hearing the Bitcoin news from the pleb perspective and the catastrophic fails, definitely consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin. And we'll see you tomorrow, guys, for a brand new episode.
To quote our awesome guest, we will have decentralized governments competing.